Welcome to another episode of Ask Better Questions. In today's episode, we'll discuss why a shift in thinking about management is important. We cover a little bit about my backstory and also discuss a path forward. But before we get into the episode, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Colorforce Solutions. I'm a director at Colorforce Solutions, and we support organizations in evolving from a management-focused structure to one driven by leadership. If you're in the market to transform your business into a dynamic leadership organization, improving customer and staff retention, and also improving performance, be sure to reach out. Links are in the description. At Colorforce Solutions, we strongly believe the current management paradigm in business provides poor results, costs customers and staff, and ultimately results in terrible places to work. For the last 2 decades, I've worked for some of the world's largest and best-known brands. I've worked at the best of the best, and I've seen the worst of the worst. I was fortunate to meet David almost a decade ago, and we've worked together at 4 different roles in 4 different companies. We have previously discussed the lack of trust between management and staff, but also the overemphasis on process. It seems to be a defining factor in a lot of businesses. It was readily apparent that many, but not all, organizations we worked with believed staff were cogs in their machine and should be easily replaced. That contrasts with our experience at the best performing organizations where staff were viewed as essential and indispensable. Values were permeating throughout all levels and leaders were visible at all levels in these organizations. The stark difference between these organizational dynamics was very pronounced. It was deliberate and it was designed. Some of the issues we noticed in poorly led organizations were decreased employee morale. So a lack of leadership led to confusion and uncertainty amongst employees, resulting in decreased morale and motivation. Poor communication, like without effective leadership, communication within some of these organizations suffered, that led to misunderstandings, misinformation, and a lack of clarity about goals and expectations. In many of the organizations, goals were simply KPIs. That was it, just achieve your KPIs. There was no broader discussion on what the organization as a whole existed to achieve or how we fit within that structure. High turnover rates. Employees became frustrated and disengaged due to absence of strong leadership, leading to higher turnover rates as individuals sought better opportunities or a more positive work environment. There was a distinct lack of accountability in a lot of these organizations, so without a strong leader to set expectations and hold individuals accountable, there was a lack of responsibility and ownership, hindering overall organizational performance. Inconsistent decision-making. The absence of a decisive leader resulted in inconsistent decision-making, leading to confusion and a lack of direction within the organization. There was a distinct resistance to change. So effective leaders are often crucial for guiding organizations through periods of change. Now, if you're not changing, you're stagnating or dying. Without leadership, employees resisted necessary changes, hindered the organization's ability to adapt and innovate, and often instigation of change just didn't happen. Changes that needed to happen were not rolled out, or they were delayed. There was a failure to meet goals in a lot of these organizations, so an absence of clear leadership resulted in a lack of direction and focus, making it difficult for organizations to achieve goals and objectives. There was a distinct lack of innovation across these organizations. Leaders are typically responsible for fostering a culture of innovation, and without that proper leadership, organizations struggle to evolve and encourage creative thinking and develop new ideas. There was incredibly poor organizational culture throughout a lot of these companies. And if any of these things are ringing true, then you know where we're coming from. But leadership plays a significant role in shaping the organizational culture. A lack of leadership led to a negative or toxic work environment, impacting employee satisfaction and performance. There were missed opportunities. So this sort of leverages off that resistance to change. So without a strategic and forward-thinking leader, organizations failed to identify and capitalize on opportunities for growth and improvement. Oftentimes, this was also due to cultural factors where there was no reason to speak up and make the suggestion for the improvements. There were also increasing conflicts. So a lot of conflict in organizations a lot of politics in organizations that were not functioning well because there was a lack of leadership. So in the absence of effective leadership, conflicts escalated due to a lack of guidance and resolution mechanisms and things like that. There was, of course, the decreased productivity that you would expect, a lack of direction, motivation, poor culture, those sorts of things from leadership led to a just decrease in productivity as employees struggled to find purpose and meaning in their work. Financial instability, poor decision-making or no decision-making, and a lack of strategic direction contributed to poor results, which led to financial instability, affecting the overall health and sustainability of the business. There was customer dissatisfaction. Typically, the impact of poor leadership extends to customer interactions. So without effective leaders, customer service suffered, resulting in dissatisfaction and loss of business. And there was loss of reputation. A business with weak or ineffective leadership experienced a decline in its reputation, both internally and externally, and this affected the relationships with customers and partners and other stakeholders. Predominantly what we found often was a lot of the management team that were in these failing organizations were managers. They didn't know how to lead themselves out of a paper bag. They didn't know what they didn't know. No one had pulled them aside and said, this is how you actually lead. They called themselves leaders. They used the word leadership, but they didn't know what that meant. And oftentimes it was thrown back to the employees to indicate what they were going to do to lead themselves more successfully. And realistically, if you're a coach and you're turning around to your players saying, you're not kicking goals, what are you going to do to kick more goals? That's a complete failure on a coaching basis. You can't lead from that position where it's up to the people that you're leading to decide where you're going to go and how you're going to achieve these things. That's not leadership. And we found that in spades in a lot of these organizations. The only times you would ever speak to a quote-unquote leader was when you were being pulled in because something was not working. Both of us, Dave and I, decided that there had to be a better way. We've made Colour4 solutions to change the way businesses are structured, not to remove process, but rather to focus on leadership. Effective leadership in organizations provides three key things. It improves performance, it improves customer and staff retention, and it improves innovation. It does a lot more than that. It improves culture and whatever else. And we've also found businesses with strong leadership were happier workplaces and just great places to work. So we've set ourselves the challenge to create the means for business to achieve this transition. And we have invested a great deal of time and effort creating the tools and information that businesses need to create the mindset required to make this leap. Now, I'm currently writing a book, which is close to being finalized, and we have more information, including a course, which is available, will be available via our website. Our passion is finding leaders with the courage to recognize the failings of the current model and who believe a leadership-driven business is the future. So that brings us to the end of this episode. If you think like we do, that businesses need to improve and that you'd like to know more, visit our website for more information. If you like the podcast, leave a rating and review and share the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And until next week, I'm Peter Adams, and I'll be here next week to ask better questions.